into an evil blade and stuff like that. That's why I really want to know more about it, because when you first see it and you go into it's like that evil blade, and like, really? Because as far as, you know, if you look back into Chrono Trigger's backstory, it was one of the first creations, not necessarily by Balthazar, at least I don't think so, but it was one of the most significant thing, along with the Mammon machine and various other things that they made out of Dreamstone and stuff like that, which I guess you could account for that by saying it had Lavos' influence, because that's where it came from, but I don't think it's that simple, because it was a good blade, you know, the point that, Melchior made it, that's true, where he trusted it to someone who said, like, you don't talk, but you feel like you know what you're doing. Here you go, here's the ruby knife, go stop the queen, you know? So it was a good blade, you know? So I certainly hope it's not that simple. I hope it's not just Lavos manifesting himself somehow from beyond the Tesseract and deciding to make it evil.
No. It wasn't too complicated, but it wasn't so overly simple like that. I think they explained it a little bit, like when you do defeat Dario and Serge gets the Masamune.
They say it feeds off negative emotions, you know, like of Dario and then earlier jealousy, but it's not that just made it evil, you know, like we're talking someone so evil you can't even touch them, you know, kind of like Arthas and you know, like don't touch me, I'm evil.
There's also a possibility that the evil just accrued little by little over time.
Maybe it was suppressed, yeah.
Because it had been lost for so long until Karsh and Dario made it to the Isle of the Damned.
Yeah.
Walking around to that island annoyed me.
Yeah, a lot of the game has, you know, that same level of passion you saw in Chrono Trigger, but there's also a lot of elements that are kind of weird about it, you know, like it's insistent on certain things, like even the weird idiosyncrasies, like the ability to run from bosses and stuff like that, which then they proceed to taunt you and say, you know, like, you know, it doesn't really do anything, like, I think the latest time I played the game is when you're going on Mount Pyre, I didn't get the blessing of the water dragon or anything, and I didn't really level up, at least not too much, so fighting the 3 dragon knights was quite difficult, so I just kept running and running until the scenario played out well, and each time Marcy was taunting me, and it's just like, over and over again. But it has that strategic element, you know.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. See, it's just, you know, doing that because you weren't leveled up enough, that's one thing, and you know, the way Chrono Cross leveled up is also different because, you know, you leveled up using those stars, which became your ammo for the summons, and then you only leveled up after like really significant boss battles or, you know, big non-boss battles. And I thought that was kind of interesting, and it made it so that you didn't have to just grind and grind and grind and grind in order to, you know, level up, which is nice. And if you've done everything you can and the boss is still tough, it, you know, lets you know that you really need the right strategy, you need the right elements, you need to do them in the right combinations. You really need to use the field effect, to get it to the opposite of whatever color that the boss you're fighting is.
You don't need to rely on it, but the elements are there in order to maximize it, including opposite innate affinities, because it can matter, you know, like against Miguel, for instance, you know, like it was the heal all, like I said, the various cure all abilities, but just maybe it's because he didn't use his lightsaber attack too often, but it was an intense fight, mostly because of narrative-wise, but you know, that fight is difficult, and I can understand why.
Yeah, and the fact that it's basically the opposite of the fight with Dario, and that you're Lynx, and that, you know, he kills you basically in one hit, as he uses his white element attacks. But compare that to other boss battles. Like, for instance, the most cheap boss battle that I can remember from this era was Ozma from Final Fantasy IX.
Yes.
Oh, that stupid friggin' beach ball. Oh,
I love him.
God.
I love how if you beat him before you encounter Hades, you know, Hades acknowledges it. It's such a great in-joke.
Yeah, that is pretty nice, but you know, the thing is, it's like the only way you could beat Hades was luck. Yeah, you had a sort of a strategy, but like unless you leveled up really, really high and got literally everything in the game before you fought him, which makes, you know, beating him just kind of an icing on the cake type thing.
That might have been one of the cruelest reference to past Final Fantasy games. When you think about it, it's really a reference to Chaos in the original, because there was a point in the programming on the NES only that if you didn't do enough damage in a certain amount of time, he would cure himself and restore all his life, and he would get into an infinite loop. I've seen it happen once or twice. Like that can happen with Ozma. He will heal himself despite you.
Well, that's the thing. There are two ways that can go, because he has his light hemisphere and his dark hemisphere. And if he's on the light hemisphere and uses Doomsday, then he'll hurt himself. Along with the rest of your party, but ironically, Doomsday is one of the spells you want him to use against you because you can prepare for it.
In case people don't know what we're talking about, you know.
I paid 50 cents for him at a vending machine outside a supermarket. Oh, exactly. Yeah, but my biggest gripe about this was one of my gripes about Final Fantasy IX, even though I like the game, is that you had to fight him with Zidane. Oh my Christ, I wanted just about anyone in the party besides Zidane. I mean, it was tough enough to get him like high enough, level to trance. Because yeah, he's useful when he trances, especially in this battle, but getting him right to that point and then hoping you don't get into a random encounter and he gets hit again, and then you lose it all over again. Why couldn't it be like the limit breaks in Final Fantasy VII, where you could store it and go into trance whenever you wanted to?
I like the Flaming Armont. It's what an awesome nickname.
Oh yeah, I loved using him. Like once I got into Memoria, it was like Zidane out, Amarant in, Garnet, Vivi, and Steiner. It was the ultimate team. For me, anyways. I mean, come on, Amarant's so much more useful in general. He could make your opponent weak against an enemy attack. When I saw he had the curse attack, I hadn't used him much in the game, and I saw Ozma use curse. I'm like, oh my god, this is what Amarant can do, and then it's just make him weak against an element. Well, that's useful, but oh come on!
In the film. Go on.
You're telling me that he can use that stupid thing where he can basically do bad breath combined with like Ultima in one attack and just ruin my day? Like that's what it boiled down to, is you had to hope he didn't use curse, because you could not recover from that.
I mean, that's when Quina became useful with like Angel Snack and various things like that. But
yeah, if Quina didn't die straight away from the attack, I mean, you had to go in there.
Yeah,
you had to go in there. Zidane had to be close enough to trance that he could do it while getting hit. He had to get hit and not die. He had to get hit and not get a status effect. And then Ozma had to not use curse the entire time. And then after that, it was basically spamming shock and Bahamut. And maybe flare the whole time if you had Vivi.
And again, it depends entirely on what he decided to do, because he was so fast, he could just heal himself several times.
Unfortunately, that's another gripe I had about Final Fantasy IX, was that the battle system was a little poorly designed, because enemies would take so long between attacks. I mean, no one was a worse offender than the final boss, Necron. Oh yeah, it's like, what? This is the final boss? Oh man. I mean, I thought it was bad enough that I was fighting red-haired David Bowie.
Why should the world exist without me? That wouldn't be fair.
Though I will say the Ultima that he used and Kuji used in this was awesome.
Yeah.
But there was a double-edged sword, because it was awesome and I couldn't use it. But yeah, Final Fantasy IX. What a great homage to like classic RPGs that was,
So many different ones,
Oh yeah,
various Final Fantasy references.
Oh yeah, so many little things here and there. Even the items at the auction house, like the rat's tail, for instance. I think I might have. So up until now, I thought the most obscure, the hardest thing you could do would be was trying to get me to do an Excalibur 2 run. But you know more about it than I do. I just heard about it. Do you know the details?
You had to go to the same place in one city over and over and over at certain points during the game. And it was very esoteric, there were no hints to it, but like certain things would change every time you come back, and eventually they trigger another side scene. And I think so. Like a kind of
Yeah, I think they covered it under game trailers, or I forgot the name of their series, but I gotta look at it. Just give it to my mind. I thought it was something more like, her true name, Garnet's her name. But yeah, speaking of it, I thought the cutscenes possess their own sense of artistry, because they bridge the gap. You got the old school gameplay, but then you have the weirdness of the storyline, especially when we get into this, but moments like this, because this, of course, was before I played the original Final Fantasy III, but like when I first saw this airship, it wasn't just cool, but like, what a marvelous disguise it has, like, imagine seeing her traumatized, like when she was 3 years old, as her village is being burned, and all because Garland feared Gaia's summoners, and you see this in the sky, it's like, what a traumatic memory.
Oh yeah, but
that thing is creepy looking.
Oh yeah, definitely. But as a side note, I loved the steampunk airships in this game. Oh man, speaking of which, go ahead. Yes, I was just about to get to that. Put that on. Put that on. Assault of the White Dragons. Best cutscene I've ever seen in any RPG. But yeah, I mean, I was depressed at first when I got to disc 4 because it's like, oh, the mist is back. Oh, this is obnoxious, and the music is kind of lousy now in the overworld. But then this happened.
It's like I said, it reconciles the two very well, and it's nice. Just before I say this, like the interesting thing I think about Final Fantasy IX was that, in addition to what he said earlier about the PlayStation 2, this was the game that was the most played by people on the PlayStation 2. I understand, it's what people use their PlayStation 2s for, apparently.
Yeah, because it came out so late in the system cycle. Can we get a little bit more volume? Out of nowhere. Not all of them.
Oh yeah.
Not all of them.
That's the red rose, right? That one.